Well, hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for today's Lunch and Learn. I'm Audrey Lindsay, a project archaeologist here at Shumla. Today, I'll be talking about the Alexandria Project Archive. This incredible 25 terabyte digital dataset results from Shumla's recently completed Alexandria project, an effort that documented 235 rock art sites across the Lower Pecos. I'll share Shumla's goals and plans for the archive. I'll explain its different components, discuss our data preparation process, and finally, show a small case study to give a glimpse of the archive's potential for future research and public education. So some of you are already familiar with Shumla, but for those of you joining us today who are not, I'll do a brief background. Shumla is a nonprofit archaeological organization dedicated to preserving the oldest known books in North America, the rock art of the Lower Pecos. We achieve this mission through 4 pillars: documentation, research, stewardship, and education. Shumla operates primarily in the Lower Pecos, an archaeological region located in southwestern Texas and northern Coahuila, Mexico. This arid desert landscape is known for its 3 rivers, the Pecos, the Rio Grande, and the Devil's River, and for its deep canyons, rock shelters, caves, and outcrops. These features have preserved the material culture and the rock art of the indigenous hunter-gatherers that lived in this area. Although hunter-gatherers first entered the Lower Pecos beginning in approximately 12,500 Cal BP, the earliest surviving evidence of rock art traditions begins around 5,500 years ago. An estimated 300 plus rock art sites are present just within the US side of the region, and we know that many other sites are present in Coahuila. We're not sure exactly how many sites are present, but based on how many sites are here in Val Verde County, we expect that Coahuila also has a high number of sites as well. Now, among these 300 plus rock art sites, archaeologists have currently identified 5 rock art styles: Pecos River style, red linear style, red monochrome style, bold line geometric style, and historic period rock art. So let's rewind back to 2016. At this point, and after 18 years of documentation and research, Shumla realized a few really important things. First, Dr. Carolyn Boyd's 2016 book, The White Shaman Mural, An Enduring Creation Narrative, was just published and demonstrated that the Pecos River style murals in the region are multi-layered visual narratives that share the creation mythologies, cosmologies, and belief systems of the archaic period hunter-gatherers. This region is a library of those ancient visual texts that must be preserved for further research. In addition, there's so much more to learn about those other 4 rock art styles in the region. Second, the rock art sites were and still are quickly degrading due to both human and environmental factors. And third, we couldn't complete our usual intensive documentation process for all sites before the destruction, as it takes about 1 to 3 years for us to document each site to the highest level. So in response, Shumla launched the Alexandria Project, a baseline documentation effort that aimed to record as many rock art sites as possible in the Lower Pecos. And this project had 4 goals: to collect data that could be used to address our project research questions and to inform Lower Pecos rock art research for years to come, to determine the threatened status of their rock art sites and prioritize future documentation efforts accordingly, to build stronger relationships with local landowners, land managers, and site stewards, and to increase public awareness in the importance of preserving and protecting these rock art sites for the future. Our baseline methods were flexible and adjustable to the needs of a wide range of these site types and different rock art styles. But on the whole, we relied heavily on digital photography. We applied structure from motion photogrammetry, or 3D modeling, to digitally reconstruct the rock art panels and entire sites. We utilized high resolution imaging to create stitched gigapanorama imagery of rock art panels that we call gigapans. We took high-resolution photos of specific motifs and features of the rock art and sites, as well as general panel photography, context photography, and crew photography. In addition to all of this high-resolution imagery, we also created site maps, updated standardized state archaeological forms, and filled out Shumla's detailed rock art site form for each site. The rock art site form collects 175 data fields about the site type, the rock art styles present at the site, detailed information about these styles, and the site conditions, just to name a few categories. In particular, the rock art site form's iconographic inventory lists 114 common iconographic attributes and motif categories that are present in Lower Pecos rock art styles. This includes iconography common for anthropomorphs or human-like figures, including their body type, head shape, any paraphernalia they might be holding, as well as repeated enigmatic figures or zoomorphic figures like deer or felines. During baseline documentation, Shumla recorders filled in these categories with yes, no, or unknown, depending on the iconography present at the site. In yet another form, or tab, we also recorded a brief site narrative about each site. So for each documented site, Shumla created what we called a site file. This folder houses all of the baseline data collected for each site as a part of the Alexandria project. In this example for site 41VV224, also called Farida Annex, you can see that we have these main organizing folders for our data: mapping, panel images, photo processing, site and crew photos, and site documents. Now, each of these are pretty straightforward, but I'm just going to kind of explain what type of data we keep in each of these folders. Our mapping folder, obviously, holds our site sketch maps, our rock art panel maps, and our GPS site centroid information. The panel images folder contains all the panel imagery for the site, including our stitched gigapan images, ortho photos, 3D models, and general panel photography. The photo processing folder holds all the original data for these composite gigapan and 3D modeling imagery, including those original photo series used to create those stitched images, and also the editable 3D model files. Our site and crew folder includes 3 subfolders for site context photos, crew photos, and feature photos. These feature photos accompany and provide supporting images for Shumla's rock art site form database. And last but certainly not least, we have our site documents folder, which contain all of our photo logs and our daily recorder notes for that site. So 4 years later, Shumla documented a total of 235 rock art sites across the Lower Pecos, and we amassed over 25 terabytes of digital data. We created 375 gigapanoramas. We produced over 250 3D models of the rock art sites, and we collected over 10,000 supporting photos. We completed 228 rock art site forms and collated them into a single searchable rock art site form database. And we really built lasting relationships with local landowners, land managers, and state and federal agencies across the region. The Alexandria Project generated this incredible iconographic, visual, and spatial data set for at least half of an archaeological region. So after collecting this 25 terabytes of data and knowing its amazing potential, what did Shumla plan to do with it? In line with our mission and goals, we're packaging up this data set into the Alexandria Project Archive. Our goals for the archive are twofold. We aim to facilitate continued research in Lower Pecos rock art and archaeology for years to come. And we want to increase awareness and engagement in preservation of Lower Pecos rock art with the general public. And to achieve these goals, Shumla is planning to develop a tiered public and researcher online access platform to the Alexandria Project Archive and digitally curate the archive using the latest standards-based practices for long-term digital preservation. But first, I'll briefly go over our plans for the archive access platform. We're envisioning this online platform or portal to be well-designed and user-friendly, but most importantly, tiered to provide different content to different audiences. In our first platform or tier for the public, we are imagining an interactive and engaging digital experience where public users can explore the high-resolution imagery of rock art panels organized by individual rock art site. Users could manipulate 3D models and gigapans in embedded 3D viewers. We'd also include educational content such as Alexandria Project statistics, overview project information, facts about the rock art, the panels, and individual figures. But mainly, we really want this tier of the digital platform to be interactive, engaging, and educational. The second platform or tier for accredited researchers will provide access to the expanded Alexandria Project dataset to facilitate further research. This tier would have additional safeguards, such as a researcher review process, a data use waiver, researcher username and password system, and user tracking, so the data are used and managed in a secure way. The researcher tier will have 3 components: the site files, the rock art site form database, and a project geographic information system, or GIS, geodatabase. The site files, as you saw with our earlier example at Korea Annex, and on this current slide, shows the baseline data that was collected for each documented site. So each of those 235 site files for each site provides a digital snapshot of that site and basically serves as a virtual site visit for researchers. The rock art site form database, as I mentioned before, compiles 228 of those rock art site forms together into a single searchable database. This database is a comprehensive resource for researchers to identify research questions, develop research designs, and complete comparative analyses using any data category in the database. And last but certainly not least, the project GIS will allow researchers to explore specific research questions using the powerful GIS software. Rock art is situated within its context and within its landscape. With this research, researchers could, for example, explore the distribution of rock art sites or map different rock art styles across the region. But before we can build this dream online access platform that we're planning for, we first need to curate the archive. And when you imagine curation, you might imagine something like this: organized boxes of artifacts, photo logs, and site forms in a back room. And archaeology in general has curated physical objects and data like this in the past. But this type of curation won't work for the archive, mainly because our data are mostly digital born. These data first exist in a digital format, a digital photograph, a digital form, a composite gigapan, or a 3D model. Our curated data set is going to look something more like this: flashing and whirring servers and cords and flashing lights. So enter the ever-expanding and sometimes confusing world of digital curation. Shumla has always implemented certain data security and curation strategies, such as redundant data backups, but long-term digital data preservation is a whole other beast. Our 25 terabyte data set presents certain challenges. First, because it is so large, 25 terabytes is pretty large, and it features such unique data types, such as those 3D model files. So one of our big questions, how much server space do we need? Server space for terabytes of data can be expensive, depending on the type of server. Would we store it in a cloud-based server or a physical server? And what are the pros and cons of each type? How would we protect our data in the digital age with data integrity and security? And last but not least, what would we need to do to prepare our data for long-term curation, preservation, and eventual access? In this effort, we have partnered with the Center for Archaeological Studies at Texas State University to help us plan and eventually maintain a copy of the prepared archive for long-term preservation at their curation facility. One of our first tasks was to educate ourselves. We dove right in, we did our own research, and we spoke with a wide range of digital preservation specialists, digital curators, and archaeological organizations that have already launched online access platforms. I can honestly say at this stage, the digital preservation world was a bit intimidating. A second task was to develop a dedicated restricted access curation server, separate from Shumla's other servers and data. Having this curation server separate, but on a similar redundant backup schedule, ensures that the data are safe in case of technical failures, malware, ransomware, or any other issues that could come up. Now, through this learning curve, is what we called it, we sometimes felt like we were drinking from the fire hose of knowledge. But we really gained valuable insights from meetings with different specialists. And with the completion of our new curation server and our kind of newly acquired knowledge, we narrowed down our objectives to our first step, and that was data preparation of the archive. That's us going through the process. So we faced a really tough question right off the bat. What do you curate as a part of your collection for long-term digital preservation? In an ideal world, we would digitally preserve everything from the Alexandria Project Archive, or from the Alexandria Project in the archive. But due to technological and financial constraints, that's not really possible. Digital preservation specialists that we spoke to proposed that first you should review your entire data set and determine which data are critical for your intended goals and objectives. So Shumla met to determine which data we plan to curate for long-term digital preservation. We decided on the following 16 file types to include for curation in the archive. In these same discussions, we also determined which file types would eventually be made accessible for public access, and those file types that would only be accessible to accredited researchers. Now we'd identified which files we wanted to curate for the archive. We then needed to identify all the tasks that we needed to complete to prepare each and every file for each and every site. Two of our major objectives for this data preparation process were completeness and consistency. First, we aimed for completeness. Shumla recorders were thorough and dedicated in the field and in the lab, but after 4 years, we just wanted to review each data file for each site to ensure that that data were complete. Our other objective was consistency. Shumla had implemented rigorous file naming conventions and folder structures at the outset of the project, but understandably, 4 years of field work with a range of different staff members and interns and visiting researchers led to some understandable inconsistencies with file and folder naming on occasion. To this end, I developed an overall data preparation plan and 16 individual file preparation workflows for these different 16 file types that we plan to curate. These workflows provided a step-by-step roadmap for our data preparers to ensure that our files were complete and consistent across the entire archive. Another important consideration for us during data preparation was metadata. Metadata are data or information about your data. It's the information that explains and describes the data to be curated in detail, including information such as the file type, its origin, the date of creation. The metadata that we created, as a part of data preparation is going to provide both a key and a guidebook for future Shumla staff and managers, but also for future users of the data set. For the Alexandria Project Archive, we decided upon 2 tiers of metadata just to start us out. First, we created a metadata document for each site. You can see an example of one of those on the screen right now. It's kind of akin to an artifact tag. You have the site trinomial, if applicable, the site name, when we documented it, when we prepared it, how many rock art panels, what styles are present, and then we go through and describe what's in that site file and what we collected for that site. Overall, we have a kind of an overall collection metadata document for all 235 sites. And that's a really big Excel document that I didn't want to scare everyone with. So although data preparation and curation might not be the most exciting process to complete or for you all necessarily to listen to, data preparation was really essential. Working to make the archive as complete, consistent, and well organized as possible ensures that the data set is accessible and user-friendly for future researchers. This process also ensures that future Shumla data managers and other data stewards can best understand and manage the archive, hopefully into perpetuity. So here you can see two photos of myself and Tim Murphy. We prepared each site file, individual file by individual file, site by site, for curation as part of the archive. We started in October 2021 and we finished in February 22. We prepped each and every site file, all 235. Right now, I'm still preparing that searchable rock art site form database, ensuring completeness, ensuring consistency, and I should complete it by the end of June. So at that point, the archive would be officially ready for our interim researcher access and ready also for the next step in its long-term digital preservation journey. So we've dove into the archive. You guys have heard all about it. I'd like to take a moment to briefly go through a case study to showcase just a single research avenue of the wide-ranging potential of the archive. And I want to take a look at how researchers can utilize the rock art site form's iconographic inventory. One of the best parts of this searchable database is that researchers can search for or query for information that Shumla has collected about different data across the form. In this case study, I wanted to learn more about winged anthropomorphs in Pecos River style specifically. Here in the inventory and shown in the red box, you can see that we collected information about this attribute at documented sites with yes, no, or unknown, depending on whether winged anthropomorphs were present at the site. So first things first, I query or search the database for wings and see what comes up. I make sure that I select yes and unknown because I want to see them all, even if the figure is fragmentary, even if we're not sure if it's a winged anthropomorph or not. As a researcher, I want to kind of look at it and see for myself. So after I completed that query, the database returns 26 records of sites where the iconographic inventory says yes or unknown for winged anthropomorphs. Now from this list that I gained from the database, I can go into each and every one of those site files and explore the data myself. We have so much visual information, it's basically completing a virtual site visit. The sky is really the limit. I can review the high resolution gigapans and feature photos to collect really fine-grained attribute data for comparative analyses. I can also use the imagery to complete illustrations and sketches for these figures as a part of my comparative analysis. I can measure these figures and get height, width, and whatnot using our scaled 3D models. And I can map the sites with Pecos River style winged anthropomorphs across the region using the project GIS. Now, this brief case study alone just shows really the tip of the iceberg for really the amazing potential of the Alexandria Project Archive. Using the rock art siteform database as a starting point, researchers can pinpoint a wide range of selected iconography, rock art styles, site attributes, agents of deterioration affecting the rock art, and other data, and they can then use that as their map to start searching through a large sample of high resolution visual materials. With this archive, we are anticipating that researchers can build on previous findings and continue to complete really groundbreaking research that can expand our understanding of archaic period hunter-gatherers that produce Pecos River style rock art and their mythology, their cosmology, and their worldviews. We can learn more about the 4 other equally important rock art styles in the region that aren't quite studied as much, and really understand the palimpsest that is this region. We can even possibly classify and identify new rock art styles from this data set. So we're really excited here about this vast potential for the archive. While we continue to work towards our goals for that dream online access platform in the future, researchers and graduate students will be able to access this prepared archive at a dedicated researcher workstation at Shumla's San Marcos office. And groundbreaking research using the Alexandria Project Archive has already begun. Some of this recent work has been published already. If you haven't already seen this particular article, Dr. Carolyn Boyd and fine artist Ashley Busby's recent paper interprets the speech breath motif in Pecos River style iconography. You can find this article on Shumla's website if you're curious to read it. It's a fantastic article. Other research projects are headed to the press or in progress. Dr. Diana Rolon recently completed her research documenting and interpreting felines in Pecos River style iconography, and her paper is forthcoming. So what's really exciting is that the archive really is both a beginning and a solid foundation. We anticipate the archive to serve as a comprehensive research for further scholarship of Lower Pecos rock art and archaeology from many different interrelated disciplines. Archaeology, rock art studies, anthropology, Mesoamerican iconography and epigraphy, chemistry, geology, just to name a few. We envision that this archive is also going to foster expanded public interest and stewardship in the rock art, protection and preservation for years to come. So thank you all so much for your time. I was going to open up our remaining time here for any questions that you guys might have. Please feel free to unmute and ask directly, or you can also ask in the chat, and I should be able to see that. So thank you very much. I see a question from Phil. Are new sites being added now and in the future? It's a great question. So we expect and anticipate that sites will be added as Shumla gains access to new rock art sites in Val Verde County. We might meet a new landowner that's interested in having sites documented. We might in the future go and document those sites using Alexandria Project baseline methods. With that, we really, this archive really is an excellent sample of sites, but we can always have more sites. So a great part about the data preparation process that we completed is that data preparation plan and those individual file workflows. So the team goes out in the field and records 10 rock art sites. They complete that, documentation, they post-process the data. Then they can also go through data preparation process for the archive and complete that for 10 sites. And then eventually we could merge it with the existing Alexandria Project Archive. So that would be exciting for sites both in Val Verde County and perhaps someday in the future, we would really love to be able to document the sites in Coahuila, Mexico. We know that they're there. Dr. Solveig Turpin did an excellent documentation of that in a book that we would just love to get over there and do Alexandria Project baseline documentation and then add those to the archive to get kind of a fuller sample across the river. But we shall see. So that is that first question. So then I see one down here that says, how are trinomials assigned to new sites? We had this kind of come up in the Alexandria project. We'd be documenting a site and someone would, look across the way and see, oh, there's a nice rock shelter. And we'd go across and see rock art. We'd first check with the Texas Archaeological Research Lab and see if that site already had a trinomial. And if it didn't, we would assign it a temporary designation for our documentation purposes, usually Alex and then a 3-digit number. Once we did that, part of our process was creating and filling out standardized state archaeological site forms, the tech site form that many of you may be familiar with. We would fill out one of those forms for that newly identified site, and then we would send it into the Texas Archaeological Research Lab. And they are the ones that would assign new site trinomials. And then here's another one. Do you discriminate between undocumented sites that apparently offer nothing new versus a newly found site with new features? You know, I think as a part of the Alexandria project, we would document a site whether it had a smudge or a 30-meter long panel. And one of our reasonings for that was that we wanted to explore rock art production across the entire region. And that kind of smudge of rock art might have once been, you know, something larger, but it would help us better understand the production of rock art across the region and its distribution across the landscape. So during the project, we would document a site with just a small bit of rock art, and then sites, you know, for example, like Panther Cave that have massive Pecos River style mural and multiple rock art sites. That's the same is true for the archive. If we documented it during the Alexandria project, it was included as a part of the archive, kind of regardless of what kind of rock art was present, whether it was new or you know, we like to think that all of the sites can offer something new, even if it is just the presence of rock art. So hopefully that answers that. Let's see, when is Carolyn and Deanna's work on felines being published? I can't wait to search the archives. Well, we're excited for everyone to be able to search the archives as well. Dr. Rolon's research, she is currently working on drafts. I'm really excited for you guys to read it. She's still kind of going through the review process, so I can't give you an exact date, but stay tuned, stay tuned. When will the public have access to the Alexandria database? This might be some time to have access to the Alexandria Project Archive. We talked a little bit about that online access platform, and that is our kind of golden standard for how we'd love to have public access to the archive. For now, we're only planning to have the public have access to the imagery, but we really are in discussions to also include the rock art site form database. It might be kind of a, some information might be removed to protect the rock art sites. You know, we have a lot of people in the public who are fascinated and believe strongly in preservation, but we also would like to protect the rock art sites. And so in that future online access platform, we might have access to high resolution imagery and maybe a kind of an edited copy of the rock art site form database. But I can't give an exact timeline on that, the launch of that online access platform. It really is a very big world out there with digital curation, with development of online platforms. You know, this is ballpark, but I would say 3 to 5 years for that platform, because we need to meet with specialists. How do you create a huge platform for terabytes of data? So we are in the process of learning and planning for the online access side, the public side of that, as well as the researcher side. If you're interested in looking at some of the imagery right now, Shumla has 2 separate platforms where you can look at our GigaPan imagery and our Sketchfab account that looks at 3D modeling imagery. And so at the end of this chat, I can add the links to those so that you guys can explore some of the imagery right now. I think that was the last question. And if any others?
Are those links on the website?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I think I will just pull the website really fast right now. I don't think so, but let me add them to the chat right now. But it's, you know, one of the great things about Sketchfab and these online access platforms is that throughout the Alexandria project, people could stay tuned and kind of watch as we uploaded these different 3D models and different gigapans and kind of track us along and see where we were. But that said, we would really, it's two separate platforms. We'd really love to have something that was all in one place. You can explore all the imagery for a single site. So that was one of the reasons, you know, this is our kind of interim public part of the archive, until we can get that other online access platform prepared in the next few years. So I just shared in the chat, it's our Sketchfab account link. So if you click on that, it'll take you and you can see the different 3D models. And I will share our Gigapan one, our Gigapan platform, where you can look at some really high resolution imagery there. Here we go. And here is the Gigapan portal. Are you currently using Shumla physical server sites or cloud? Right now, we are using a physical server system. With Cass, our kind of collaborators in this project and who will eventually house our long-term digitally preserved version of the archive, we were in discussions with different companies about whether we would have physical servers or cloud-based servers. For now, we're really sticking with the physical servers. Sometimes cloud-based can be slightly more expensive. It's kind of a trade-off, is that sometimes with cloud-based server systems, you can have extra IT assistance, you know, that comes with the program that provides cloud, kind of that cloud server system. And then we have to take into account too that Cass is a part of Texas State, and so we need to adhere to Texas State's IT preferences for server types and whatnot. So for now, our servers are on a physical based server, and in the future, I think we'll have to see which direction we go. But for now, they're on a physical based server.
Wondering, since it's on servers, how many backups are there, and how many different locations are the backups in?
Mm-hmm. So we're really lucky to have a really wonderful IT consultant that works with us, who got us really started on these redundant backups. So we do, I believe, daily, weekly, and monthly backups.
Yeah.
And we have, you know, kind of the on-site server, and we also have a nearby off-site server
Okay.
where data are backed up. We also have a server that is further away, that is cold storage. It's not accessible via the internet, and so, you know, knock on wood, in the case of the building blows over, or heaven forbid, a ransomware attack, that third kind of location is completely cold storage. Any last questions? All right. Well, thank you guys again so much for joining. Feel free to check out those links, visit our website, check out our social media. And again, yeah, thank you all so much for joining us.